Good afternoon, everyone. I was just seeing that everyone can hear me clearly. If you can give me a thumbs up, it'd be great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Voltan webinar series. My name is Michael Webster. I'm from Stanilite. I'm your presenter. If you have any questions, please use the chat box on the left-hand side. They'll be answered during the webinar. Feel free to throw any questions in. Hopefully, I'll be able to help you. Okay, so Stanilite Nexus introduction. We're going to talk about emergency lighting, our Nexus RF system, and a little bit about Stanilite, the brand itself. Okay, so Stanilite, brief history. Been in Australia for over 40 years now. We've got our own R&D or engineers in software and also in product in our Lidcombe factory in New South Wales. We won the design award for the Quick Fit. The Quick Fit is the benchmark of what we call exit lighting. The great thing about the Quick Fit is, compared to other fittings at that time, you could actually change the fitting without needing to isolate the switch, and it changed how we did emergency lighting. Bespoke solutions capability, it's pretty simple. Bespoke solutions basically means we can make custom product to suit an individual need. We're actually talking to a consultant today about a mental health facility that they're having trouble with exit signage because of there was potential for in the mental ward for the patients to actually hang themselves because the exits were not allowed to be hung any lower than 2.7 meters high. So we actually had to come up with a solution that would actually take care of that problem. So we do have a couple of things that we do like that all the time. Pioneer of the successful application of wireless technology. So emergency lighting has come a long way from the data cable to what we call the wireless to DALI, but the RF system is unique. It's the only system in the market that is actually self-healing. And market leader, we got 40% of the share in Australia now. Across both our Nexus LX cabled solution and our newer RF solution, we probably have about 3,000 sites throughout the country. A few more kicking in. Alright, so we're just going to go to the next slide. We're going to slide 3. Why emergency lighting? It's the standard. We've got to have emergency lighting in the standard, and part of being able to get into the building is you've got to have emergency lighting up to a certain standard. It needs to be tested every 6 months as part of your building requirements. So the emergency lighting monitored solution stops people from flicking a breaker, waiting 90 minutes and checking if the lights are still on or not. It's a very powerful solution. Okay, flicking over. Nexus RF. Now this is where probably our number one product is these days, is Nexus RF. It's a radio frequency system that self-heals. No other system in the market for emergency lighting actually has a self-heal function. We can actually lose a router or a fitting that goes offline, and the fitting and the system will actually remold itself to suit this particular environment of the time. If we have a power outage in an area, the fittings will actually still work as will go into emergency modes. The fittings that are not in emergency mode will recreate a new network and self-heal immediately. Over 450 major facilities. We've got airports covered. We have hospitals including intensive cares. We have approximately 140 hospitals just in one state alone in Queensland, where we actually have that many hospitals. In Nexus RF, that's including intensive care areas, radiation bunkers and the like. Universities, defence, we've got them over the line, and all the shopping centres as well. We're a very, very dominant brand up in Australia. Simplicity in the system is, if you've got a problem with the Nexus with your current emergency lighting system, it could be any brand, including one of our older style of systems, you can actually continue with their brand, with the other brand, run tests, and as fittings fail, you can replace them with RF fittings, and you can run two systems, and you can replace and upgrade a building within your standard maintenance schedule. We're currently doing a site called the Princess Alexandra Hospital, and over the last 4 years we've been repairing and replacing the previous brand fitting with our Nexus RF system, and we're about halfway through. The client is actually saving a pile of money at the moment, ridiculously large amounts of money. Okay, reduced installation, it's single point unit installation, and the fittings take care of all their own buildings. And reliability of Nexus RF product. One of the differences with our product is this product is produced out of our Lidcombe factory in Sydney, and each fitting is tested as a circuit, as a power pack, and then as a finally as a complete fitting. No other product does that, so we actually don't have failures when we go to site. Very rarely that happens. The wireless mesh network system, as we go through, all that happens is the system will start to create its own network. The fittings will start to talk to each other, and they'll create a mesh. As they create a mesh, they start communicating to each other, and as you can see, they don't really care which fitting they're talking to. They make up their own mind, and they go back to that black box over there, which is called the area controller. The area controller is the initial head unit. There's no computer with Nexus RF. It's a virtual website. There is no software. There is no programs. All it is the fittings are extremely smart, and they record all their information back through the routers. The router's information is accessed through an IP address or directly linking into the controller itself with your PC. All you need to do is know the IP address, and you can dial into the system using any globe surfer. You could use Chrome, Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox, any of those. You will be able to monitor your emergency light system. You can monitor your emergency light system with that Nexus RF, including things such as tablets, smartphones, and makes life a hell of a lot easier. You can actually monitor sites from other countries, which we've been able to do as well. Now if you have a look at the top, you've got the exit. You'll see that it's actually talking to absolutely everything. So in the case, we could look at the exit, and it's going to talk to the baton, then swing back and talk to the area controller as its pathway for communications in this situation. If the baton fell over, the exit would actually possibly talk directly back to the controller, or bounce off either the Spitfire here or off the flood unit, and then create its communications back through that way. We normally base it around about, the fittings will hop between about 6 to 7 fittings in length, which gives you around about a meter spread of around about 150 meters. And the difference with the RF system and the other RF systems about Nexus RF penetrates through walls, it sees through concrete, steel, and we've even got signal out of a lead line bunker. That's the type of penetration this signal gets. It only has a small amount of signal. It only transmits under 3 milliwatts, which is it's almost insignificant, the amount it transmits at the power. Going to the next one, we're looking at a site here. If you can see the X at the top, that is the QMIR building in Hurston. That has 1,000 something RF fittings over there, and that's been established for about 4 years. Across the road where the red circle is the old Queensland Museum. At the start of the year, we actually put Nexus RF fittings in there, and the distance between here and here is approximately 350 meters, and we got clear signal from QIMR to the old museum without any problem at all. It spoke through this car park here. In a previous instance, where the QIMR building is, right up the top past where the H for hospital is, up the top there's a little building there. We had RF fittings in there, and they were talking back to QIMR as well, and they were speaking right through that hospital. That's the type of penetration our RF system has, and it has zero effect on intensive care, zero effect on airports, and zero issues with anything to do with defense. Alright, next one. Keys to the system's performance is automatic network formation. What that means is we turn on a fitting and they start to communicate and create a mesh. So we could power up a building, and within 2 hours we would have enough mesh to actually commission the fittings into the system. And what that means is that we're ready to go pretty much all the time to commission fittings on a construction site or into an existing facility. We normally, by the time you've installed a fitting and you've recorded the details, it's pretty much linked up to the system already. The nodes capable of communicating with neighboring nodes is basically talking about that mesh network again, and the 915 to 928 megahertz bandwidth allows us a lot of choices. That's 12 operating channels with one backdoor channel, and we can actually run 273 buildings in a row, where the Nexus could talk to each building or could talk to 275 different groups. It's up to how we set it up. Optimum channel selection or error correction. So it is a public channel, the 915 to 928. So in the case of we will go in and there's existing RF signal there, the system will automatically find the quietest signal and it will operate from there. Now if we've had the RF system in prior to another RF system coming in and there's RF clash and there's an issue, we can send the Nexus RF system essentially an email to say change networks, and it will automatically change the mesh network to another signal, and you can move on from there. No one goes to site, no one has to attend anything. Unaffected by the quality of cable installation. This is really important, especially when you're renovating. Nexus RF only requires what's called a hard active or an unswitched active, which emergency lighting has to sit on. It doesn't rely on filters or data cable or any excuse. As long as it's an unswitched active, which all emergency lighting should be on, the Nexus RF will take care of itself. Nexus RF relies on Nexus RF to communicate. There's no grey area with that. And self-preparing system, we briefly spoke about that. The mesh network creates essentially, think of it as an aquarium full of water, and you take out a rock and the water will find its own level. You put the rock back, the water finds its own level. It's constantly finding its own level, and it's constantly polling the systems. It's very, very live. Something goes into fault, you're looking at around about a 5-second delay before it registers on the system. This is a snapshot of the PA Hospital building number 1, and if you can see how it's a bad shot, I understand, but you can see how many fittings we have moving across to how many are online. Then we've got how many are offline. Now it's not uncommon for RF fittings to go offline. A couple of reasons. One, a circuit could be out and they'll go offline and go into single point unit. Or the other thing is there's communications coming through and they've got nothing to say. They'll go offline to speed up communication and they'll come back online 10 minutes later. We have a maintenance group, so anything that is not working at 100% to the standard, so battery might not be charging, no power to the fitting, no comms to the fitting, not sufficient light, it will automatically register that fitting and drop it into the maintenance category. And then we've got the retest group, so we've run a test and these fittings have failed. They go into the retest group, we have to do our necessary repairs, and then we retest those ones again to get your compliance. And then we got 2 days offline. Down the bottom here we've got routers. Now each of these routers, every time we have another 90 fittings we add a router, and as you can see we've got quite a lot of routers on this site. Eventually this site will be 6,000 fittings across the PA Hospital. There's a lot of fittings still to be done. But as you can see there's all different numbers underneath the routers. That's how many fittings are connected to each router. Okay, we go across to the next page and we're at PA Hospital ED department. This facility is 5 years old. It's actually just over 5 years old now, and we have 700 something fittings there, and currently on the last screenshot I took we had 3 in maintenance. The Nexus RF system is a proven performer for lack of failure. At a 7-year-old building, most emergency lighting would be running at on or around about 17% failure rate. We're running under 3 at 5 years old. That is our Our competition can't touch that, and this is running with old school technology. This is NiCad, halogen bulbs and cold cathode tubes. Our newer fittings are even better than these, but this is the advantage of testing each fitting individually 3 times before putting them into the box and shipping them off. We don't get failures, and they're high quality fitting. They don't have a long shelf life because we build to order these fittings, so they're not sitting on shelves for 12 months, and everything's going well. Next screen. Now this is the head unit. This is the Nexus area controller. This is what takes place instead of having a PC. A very robust unit and a very robust system. It controls the first 90 fittings of a project. It has a digital interface screen, and it remembers the whole database of the system. So what I suppose we should look at that. Each Nexus RF fitting remembers who it is, its location, its number, and its last 7 occurrences. It could be tested, power down, battery not charging. It'll remember all those occurrences, and it'll send all the information back to the router. The router records that information, so we actually have a spot. We have the fitting remembers all the details, we have a router remembering all the details, the head unit remembers all the details. There's a minimum of 3 to 4 spots of memory of the system at all times. You cannot kill the database unless we send you a special email to kill it. The other thing with the routers is a little bit unique from everything else in the market. They don't need to go onto a fiber network or an Ethernet network. There are no need for anything apart from a data point and an IP address or an Ethernet switch. That's all you require. These products here, they're extremely robust, and the ability to plug and play onto any network gives you a massive cost advantage on a job. We were looking at a couple of jobs recently, and we'll go through it a little bit more detail, but it's cost around about $1,000 for a router, and they'll control 90 fittings. And in most situations, if you use an ILON or some type of media converter, you're at $2,500. Then you have to buy all your control gear as well. So this does 2 jobs, and it does it for almost well over half the price. Okay, so if we go to the route, go past, we've got the router. So it essentially does all the same. It's as smart as the area controller. The only difference is with the area controller is it has a digital interface, and that's handy for linking directly with fittings. Apart from that, these are very clever little things. Alright, so a network diagram. So when we get a building and someone says, okay, we want you to run Nexus RF in here, one of the questions is that how are we going to do it? What we do is we go to our customer and we say we need a set of drawings, and we actually mark up the drawings and we do router locations. As you can see down the bottom, we've got this is an Ethernet switch style, so we've got our area controller in red going to an 8-port switch, going up to another 8-port switch, and then we run the Cat6 cable or Cat5 cable out to the area controller routers. As you can see, we've spread them out quite thinly, and we've tried to make as much of a centralized system as possible. The idea of RF is to put the controllers as best as you can in the middle of the building or in the middle of the mess. If you can't, it'll still work, but our ideal location is in the middle. We will take this network diagram to a contractor. The contractors have and Thomas and Betts will sit down with them, and we'll go through what is available for them for router options and locations. We might say we want it in comms cupboard 3, and they go, no, it's got to go in comms cupboard 4. We agree upon it, and then we start working towards it. The routers that normally put into place at the last part of the project or at the start, it doesn't matter, but they need to be there to create the mesh and record all the information. Fairly simple. Now we'll go to the next one, which is a little bit of a larger fit out. Oh, which one was this one? This is a base building for 28-story office tower. As you can see, we've got routers every 3rd floor for base building, and what that means is the routers can see between floors, no problem at all. And we've also, in the case of insurance for certain areas, we've actually put little remote control antennas out away from the routers. We put a splitter on the top of the router and we run an RG6 cable out to the middle of the area to pick up extra strength of the signal, and that is a little omnidirectional antenna there. Quite inexpensive, very easy to work with. What will happen with this building is we do base building, we put it in, a tenant comes in and they buy RF fittings, they add to the system, they buy a router, they add to the network. And that way you've always got a compliant building 100% of the time, but your tenants are not taking any taxing on the facility itself. So we consider base building as our customer and the tenants coming in as adding to the system. It's very important to do that. Going through from there to the next one, this is using Nexus RF on an existing facility. The Brisbane Markets upgrade, if you don't know it, you could Google it. It's a gigantic facility. This is stage 1 of 3. We had 22 buildings over 3 sites to centralize all emergency lighting and reporting and testing. Over to the left, Nexus Hybrid, Nexus RF, and then on the other side we have the other brand, the brand we were competing with. Nexus RF isn't the cheapest in the market. However, when you install it, by the time you install it, it is the cheapest in the market. So as you can see, at $250,000 over the counter, that's a complete price. The other brand was $210,000, but the other brand had also needed 22 Ilons at $2,500 each. Certainly bumped up the price pretty quickly to $270,000 because the Nexus RF routers just plug and play on the network. And then with commissioning, we actually already included our commissioning costs within the $250K. There was another add-on for commissioning. And then we had for plant and equipment, $12,000 versus our $5,000. The reason being, Nexus RF is remotely commissioned, while the other brands are need a 2-person commission. So on the other brand, you actually need a person to press the button on the switch on the fitting while it's being commissioned. So you need one person at the fitting, they press the switch. You need the other person at the PC saying, yes, I see the Neuron ID. With the Nexus RF system, we can actually remotely commission a building at around about 70 fittings a minute, and with the 2-button press, with one person pressing the button, the other person at PC, you'd be lucky to get through 15 fittings an hour. So the Nexus RF cuts down on a lot of labor and a lot of time in the market. Going through, then we're looking at install price. We come out around about just shy of $40,000 better than the other brand. So cost over the counter versus install cost, we will win every time. The other thing is they didn't cater for with the other brand is how much filtering they wanted to do. They wanted to use a power line carrier. There was also a pile of filters they had to purchase, $200 per circuit, which is something else that they have to look at. And also the great thing about Nexus RF is if it didn't work, they could come back to us and we'd make it work, because there's no grey area when it comes to communication with Nexus RF. Nexus RF relies on Nexus RF to communicate. Other systems with power lines, even with data cable, is it connected properly, blah blah blah, all these other excuses. Nexus RF is what it is. Okay, going to the next page. Princess Alexandra Hospital. It's a 30-year-old site, 5,000 plus emergencies. So the existing power line carrier wasn't able to perform its tests correctly. It was actually struggling to get past things such as the elevators. Electrical noise and power line carriers don't get along. It's a 13-year-old facility, in some areas 30-year-old, and all we've been doing is running a repair by replacement schedule. They run the system, they find the failures, they replace them with Nexus RF, they bring them on. And so slowly but slowly, we're around about halfway there, around about 2,000 fittings, 3,000 fittings are already installed at the PA hospital. It's been over 4 years. The thing is, it's actually cost them a lot less money to install our fittings, a better performing fitting, than using the previous brand. They were spending $140,000 a year and nothing was working. They're spending around about $80,000 to $120,000 in product with us, and everything's working. If you go back into these previous sites visits of the PA hospital, you'll see our system's working extremely well there. They've got a failure rate of around about 25% constantly at that hospital. With the other system, we're running at under 3. At the moment, we also picked up another facility a large hospital with 70 buildings, and we're doing the exact same scenario. Their site's so far behind compliance, they need to do something, and we've come back to them with a solution. Next page, just current Nexus RF sites, no idea of the type of hospitals we've been doing. Queensland Children's Hospital and the VCCC, they're gigantic. They're 5,000–6,000 fittings each. We've just picked up another one with another 6,000 fittings, and we've just picked up, started working on a university with 17,000 fittings. That's gigantic. And all with the same problems. Their existing emergency light system doesn't work. New sites, as you can see, we've been working on power stations. We've got Harvey Norman stores, we've got new airports, we've got upgrades of airports, new shopping centres, new hospitals going through, and we've also got prisons. We've got Nexus RF in prisons as well. Education here, universities, we have upgraded every single university in Queensland and northern New South Wales to Nexus RF, apart from one, and we're working on that one at the moment. And aged care facilities, again, a bit like health and aged care, Nexus systems work really well together. Now, any questions about Nexus RF? Because we're just about to go into our lithium ion range. Any particular questions you got? Okay, we'll move on to the fittings. We'll move on to fittings. So we're only going to talk about our P range of product. It's our premium range of product. It's just been released on the market, and it holds the largest warranty in Australia. It's a 5-year replacement warranty. This is our PQFLEDP. It's our quick fit with a lithium ion battery in it. So what do we got? Well, it's a quick fit. It's the benchmark of emergency lighting. It has been for a long period of time. LED technology, 100,000 hour lamp life. It's a 12-year lamp. So what we're talking about is this fitting has a light source for 12 years. How do we know? Because we're 3 times brighter than what we need to be when the fitting goes to market. The LEDs will fade, and yes, they will over a 12-year period, but when they fade at that 12-year point, they'll still be bright enough to pass. We've also changed how we charge our fittings. Our fittings are no longer trickle fed, they're pulse fed. So once they're fully charged, they send a pulse to the fitting 1 out of every 10 minutes. We've taken the work out of the fitting, we've taken the heat out of the fitting. Our batteries are being managed with charge in, they're being managed with charge out. And in the case of the lithium ion offer, it's a single battery. No more strips of 4 or 5 batteries. It's a singular lithium iron phosphate battery. The lithium iron phosphate is a fully recyclable battery, which is fantastic news for you. And the other thing that we've got, which is really important, is the power consumption is down to 3.2 watts. The emergency exit is powered and lit 24/7, 52 weeks a year. It is constantly on. It's a really hard working piece of equipment, so it never takes a break, same as our emergencies. But a lot of people look at emergency lighting and go, well, there's not much value, but these things work 100% of the time. They have to have building compliance. We'll go to our next product, which is our PLR. This is our wall. It's it's a recessed wall mounted fitting, and you don't get an emergency classification, but you still get the 24-meter viewing distance. It's only a 6-year lamp on this one. It's a different type of LED strip, but all the pulse timing and everything like that is available for you. And it does come in handy. They do, with the architects wanting something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, you can have that. You can paint the outer trim if you wish. That is available as an option as well. Then we have the PLQ LEDP, which is our quick fit and a blade light, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. it's available in a wall. It's automatically wall mount or ceiling mount as well. And again, 12-year lamp, single battery, 5-year warranty. 5 years. Our Nexus system will tell us whether it's 5 years or not. That's the great thing about the Nexus system. As soon as you put it in and commission it in, the clock starts ticking on the Nexus systems. Going through to our weatherproof exit, again, high temperature. Oh, that one's not it. Sorry. Yeah, this one, there's a little bit of a mistake here. That's not a NiCad. That's actually available in lithium as well. Our standard range has NiCads. Going through to our blade light, again, lithium ion, 12-year lamp, and that's a recessed one. That's our premium fitting. These particular ranges of fittings were actually tested by NADA across various situations, including high temperature, extreme low temperature, direct sunlight, and all 4 fittings performed within 0.0012% of each other, and NADA said they had never tested a fitting that was so perfect to each other. That just nothing's ever come close. And we've had these ones out in the market for 5 years, and they are absolutely exceptional fittings. We very rarely get any of those back. Even at 5 years, we're doing maybe a battery change, which is more than acceptable. Our IK vandal-proof fitting, suitable for prisons. It's got our quick fit technology inside of it. We've got high vermin resistance, because the vermin and vandal resistance, once you've got a vandal-proof fitting, the last thing you want to do is to be cleaning them out due to moths and things getting inside them. So the vermin protection is vital, and tamper resistant screws also vital in prisons and mental health institutions. Through to our Spitfire. Now this is our SF1 LED. It's available in a 2LED as well. This one has a D40 classification. Our 2LED has a D50 classification. Again, single cell battery, 12-year lamp life. You'll never ever use Spitfire's lamp 100% of the time. With all these P ranges, I suppose, you're looking at the warranty and the life of them, we're conservatively saying at 12 years you're going to have a fitting that's going to have a battery change. One battery change over a 12-year life cycle. And at that 12-year life, you'll probably find other issues are happening, and our fittings will be better again in 12 years time. Well, they'll be better again in 2 years time, but this fitting here will last a long period of time, give you low maintenance, low wattage, and going forward, exceptional savings in your maintenance bill. We took this product to a large hospital group, and they had 3,500 Spitfires. I took it to a university that had over 10,000 Spitfires. And it mightn't sound like much, but the going from 12 watts down to 1 watt, from 8 watts down to 1 watt, mightn't sound like a lot, but on the site with the 3,500 fittings, we had a $275,000 energy saving alone over a 5-year period. It's a bit of a no-brainer. On the 10,000 fittings, well, you can imagine how much savings they were getting. There was over $10,000 over a 5-year period. So again, we're not only giving you a lower maintenance fitting, we're saving you money and energy, and it's significant energy savings. It's almost 90% on your emergency lighting Spitfire with these fittings here. Now that's your recess. It has 3 different head sizes. It's small is about 60, then you've got an 80mm, then you've got a 140mm head as well. They all come in the box. Okay, Peter. Alright, how long do these operate per day? The Spitfire do not operate at all. The lights only come on when the power is off. So they're an emergency light only. So they are powered 100% of the time, but the lights do not come on. If you ever walk through a shop or their office, you'll see them there, and they've got a little red light on and a little test switch next to them. They only turn on when they're being run for a test, or when then there's a power outage. So the standard is they need to be tested twice a year for a 90-minute battery discharge. I hope that answers your question. Okay, going through to the next one. Surface mounted Spitfire. This is for concrete ceilings. or external sides of things. We can also have these in a weatherproof as well. And again, starting from a D40 to a D50 classification, 5-year warranty. Again, the single cell technology will bring your maintenance down. Your energy is going to come right down as well. It's a really, really good product. And now this is a batten, a PRB batten. So what do we have here? We have on the right hand side, you'll see a Spitfire. That's the emergency side of this fitting. We have a Spitfire so when the power goes out, the Spitfire operates. The two LED battens have PIR sensors, passive infrared sensors. So with these, we've designed for stairwells and tunnels and shopping centers and hospitals and the like. When there's no movement, these will power down to half power. Someone walks in to the area and it's got an 8-meter range. Anywhere within 8 meters, they'll power up 100% to full power. No movement, like in a stairwell. You might have a shift coming in, coming out 3 times a day, which is quite a common thing. The fittings will be running at a half power while nothing happens. As soon as the doors open and the people are going backwards and forwards, they ramp up to full power, and then when there's no movement for 2 minutes, they ramp back to half power. We've been finding we're getting about a 45% saving in energies in stairwells and in tunnels in these facilities. It might sound like a lot, but it actually is. There's thousands of these things. In Westfield Parramatta, which is a large shopping centre, if you ever want to Google it, they have 7 kilometres of tunnels that no one walks through apart from every so often through the day. So that's the new push now, is for energy savings in these non-critical areas. So the fittings here, they have a built-in PIR sensor, one on each end. They are a 6-year lamp. The sensor is an integral part of the lamp, and they are warranted for 5 years as well. The Spitfire is a lithium-ion battery as well. If you're ever interested in that, you can always send me an email and have a look at it and have a look for your client. We also do them as an AC as well, or as a standard batten as well. And watch this space. We've got more products coming through in this area as we go through. Now this is a completely different type of fitting. We developed this one for Bunnings stores, the large hardware franchises around the country, and they're designed for up into the pallet racking areas. At 6 meters high, we can get a 34-meter light diameter that'll pass the standard with this. It's a D100 classification. If you put it in a weatherproof case here, D80. They're the most powerful ones in the market. The idea of it is once you put them in these warehouse type of situations, you very rarely go back to them. You might have a battery change in 5 years, but the fitting is such a simple fitting. The LEDs are only on when they're in emergency mode or in test mode, though you can buy these as maintained fittings and still run them as a maintained fitting and have a nice night light going there. But the most important thing is, if you have a standard batten in pallet racked area, every year you've got to change the tube over. So you've got to hire a scissor lift, you've got to change the tube, and then move on to the next one. You really do impact on your facility, where these LEDs, you don't change the lights ever. It's only when the battery goes, and that might be in a NICAD situation maybe every 4 years, and in a lithium option you're probably looking every 6 years. So a lot less maintenance on your site, and that's the thing. You might spend a little bit more money on the fitting, but your maintenance is where it really hurts you. Everyone wants to build something new construction quite cheaply and everything's there. Mickey, to say that D400, is that true? I've never heard of it. I don't know where they're going to use a D400 classification. See, one of the constraints with emergency lighting is, with the 34-meter light spread that this particular batten offers, you can only use a small degree of it. 34 meters in diameter will not be fully allowed. You can only use 500 square meters, so it's essentially, 25 by 20 meter area. That's all you can use. So D400, if they can do that, that's all tickety boo. That must be some type of vapor light. But again, in emergency lighting mode, you are limited to how much area to the standard you're allowed, because you've also got to consider if that light goes out and it's doing an 80 meter light spread and the light goes out, then all of a sudden you've lost 80 meters of light. So you've still got to be able to have enough ambient light to be able to get from one fitting to another fitting to another fitting. So you've still got to work within that 500 square meter rule as well. But D400, I don't know. Do you know what brand it is, Mikey? Mickey? Okay, that's the end of the presentation, guys. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I've heard of Bardic before. They've been around for a while. They keep popping their heads up every so often, but I've never heard of D400. I don't think they could ever what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think they could actually use a D400. It'd have to be a vapor light. Okay. All right. Is there anything else I can do for you, gents? Well, that's it, gents. I'd like to thank you all for the viewers today that tuned in today for Voltum webinar. We now have 30-second survey. If you'd like to participate, really would appreciate it if you could do that for us, and I really thank you for your time. Thanks, guys. Could you just click in what you want to do, and we'll go from there. Thank you again.